On today's podcast, I wanted to talk about value pricing in the AI era. Many people are having this conversation, even though AI always wants to be like, this is the conversation nobody's having. Trust me, they're having it. I want to talk specifically about how to do it. I think value pricing is something whenever we do revenue reset week in Studio CEO, everyone's very confused. Like, I don't really understand how I get to that end number. And then I do understand how to articulate my value and say it costs X amount to engage me in this project. Like, many of you have that skill, but the conversations are still a bit intimidating with a homeowner, like how to talk about it. And I also want to call out why the designers who figure this out first will have a permanent margin advantage in the AI era. For the last few weeks, I've been designing a pricing calculator for the interior design industry. If code support has now gotten to a point where I can build this kind of app for everybody, then why wouldn't I? I will talk more about it later, but essentially in the back end is a huge matrix of postcodes because it takes location into consideration. It also has a lot of rules around size of the home, how many wet areas. It has industry hourly standards by location, whether you're regional or urban, and also a standardization of how long things should take based on your experience. As you log into your value calculation app, you're going to identify yourself as like 1 to 3 years or 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of really cool functionality in this thing. I'm very, very excited to launch it. At the end of the podcast episode or in the show notes, I have shared a waitlist link. But for now, I think what I want to actually explore on the podcast is, whilst I was building it, how it got me thinking about how deeply that value pricing calculation is changing, as in, or how many people are now realizing that the way we used to charge, even just setting out our hourly rates in order to decide on our value pricing, is really irrelevant in 2026. It's not something that you're going to need. That number is changing, and we need to get ahead of that change in so many ways. The problem with hourly billing, it isn't like whether or not your hourly rate is right. Most designers in the industry learn to price by the hour. It's just something that seems a little bit easier, or that's what happens the first time you decide to price for a project. You think about how long that project will take you, and then you say, okay, well, I think I would charge about this because I'm new, and then you plug and play and create pricing. And in the beginning, I think that makes sense because we're learning and it ain't broken. It was fine. And also sometimes I think you were getting some practice around value pricing because a lot of emerging designers that I've spoken to over the years and coached have always been a bit like, oh, I feel uncomfortable charging for 100 hours. I think that's just because I'm slow. Or I think for this kind of job, a living room, I've calculated it's going to take me 55 hours to source and to procure everything and to get everything organized. But of course, somebody like myself, it would not take me 55 hours to do a living room. Like, to do almost anything to a living room would not take me that long. And I think that's been very obvious. That's been quite obvious to you guys even from the beginning. You're kind of going, oh, why should they pay because I'm a bit slower? So you've almost been training yourself into value pricing anyway, understanding the nuances of time and how efficiency affects time and productivity affects time, and skills that you learn to be a better designer affects your time. And so I think we really need to strip it all back today and talk about value pricing, get ourselves confident in what we're doing, what we're delivering, and exactly how to pull together value pricing. It's funny, right? Because hourly pricing actually says to a client, the slower I work, the more you pay. That feels like a weird sales pitch, like going and saying, okay, so let's talk about how long it's going to take me. I'm actually really pedantic. I'm very details oriented, or I forget things easily. So I go back and check and I go back and check. I mean, why would you have that discussion with a client? That's wild to me. And then when you get good, like genuinely get really good, and you have years of experience at the work, you get a lot faster, obviously. But why would that mean that you earn less per project? I know you guys know this. I just, you're thinking it out loud and thinking how crazy it sounds. A designer who can read a space, brief the builder, solve a sourcing problem, all under 60 minutes or 2 hours, because she's done it 200 times, earns less under an hourly model than the junior who took 6 hours and 4 panic attacks. Make it make sense. I do not understand. That's a penalty for expertise, and it's always been the case, but it's never been so important as it is now to flip that on its head. AI is really leading a conversation and a restructure of the pricing approach. globally and industry wide and service provider wide. It is not just creatives, it is not just interior designers, it is not just creatives in general that are going to feel this pinch really, really soon, if not already. If you're using AI in your studio, which you should be, and if you're listening, I think you probably are, your production speed has almost certainly gone up. Your proposal turnaround time is shorter. Your mood boards take you less time to research. Like, you can work with Perplexity, work with Cowork, you can work with code, like you can just do all the things. You can get so much support. You may have implemented all sorts of tools, apps, agents, skills, all sorts of things to just help you with tasks that you were repeating unnecessarily. But under an hourly model, that efficiency is completely invisible to you. The same work in half the time. And then what? Are you supposed to invoice half the amount? While we're in this transition stage of AI implementation, I want you to think about your competitor who isn't using AI, and they just invoice twice as much for the same result. There's something deeply wrong with that picture. I'm not okay with it. I want to talk about what value pricing actually means. Value pricing gets talked about so much in the design coaching world, mostly from the form of like charge your worth, or as a lead magnet, download this value. I've made one myself, right? But it's science backed in a way. And that's the thing about pricing, because it's always been a tug of war between science and art. As interior design is a little like that as well. You know, there's parts of the creative process that are very art driven, and there's parts that are quite mathematical or scientific. So we do have this amazing super brain as interior designers. We sit with capacity to excel in both areas. I feel like that's shown up with my abilities with AI, with business, with strategy, with Notion, with anything nerdy, with tech. People are like, how can you do that? Or why do you do that? And I'm like excited by stuff like that. But I'm so also going to constantly touch everything and put my face on your rug because I'm tactile and I'm a designer and that's what I want to do. Every one of those lead magnets that I've ever downloaded, especially in my early career when I was really looking for guidance, I feel did lead with that charge your worth, know your worth, but there was no practical, actionable advice in there about, well, what am I worth? Like, I actually don't know. And I think it becomes quite a flyaway comment, especially if you yourself don't know your value or how to charge for the transformation. Not everybody's explaining it properly. You're not always privy to other people's rates. Maybe you've never hired an interior designer before. That was certainly me. And I didn't know how to charge for a transformation rather than the time. That just, how long is a piece of string? I did not get it. So let's talk about it. Value pricing means anchoring your fee to the outcome. So the inputs are your hours, your team, your software, your expertise. The outcome is a client who walks into a home that finally works for how she lives, or a $3.2 million renovation that came out on budget because somebody managed it properly. Somebody was advocating for that homeowner. A commercial fit out that photographs so well it ends up in the local project and the client lease rate goes up by 30%. Like, these are amazing value outcomes. The questions you need to ask, and I mean sit down and actually write the answers to this or voice memo it into whatever you want to do, is what is the outcome of working with me actually worth to this client? So that question needs to be asked every time with every project. A couple renovating their forever home in a suburb where comparable properties sell for $2.8 million. What is a beautiful, functional, well-documented design worth? What does a botched job cost them in the end? Or a commercial hospitality client opening a second venue, what does the design that works for the space and the brand and the flow and the workforce, what does that actually contribute to the revenue per table? You know, you kind of need to do that maths rather than your hourly fee. And when you think about your pricing in these numbers, even just loosely, like I know you might not know them yet, the gap between your current rate and your correct rate becomes pretty obvious and pretty uncomfortable, certainly with a lot of designers I speak to. Many designers I work with who go through this exercise in week 3 of the Studio CEO program, which is a revenue reset, almost always come out realizing they've been leaving somewhere between 30 and 60% on the table because they've been pricing for their effort and not for the outcome. When I built the pricing value calculator, I have a section in the calculator where you can reverse engineer from your last project. Like, okay, well, do you want to just check, like, what was the last project you did? A kitchen? Fantastic. What was, what rate did you charge them? Okay, how many jobs do you do a year? This is how much money you leave on the table every year by not charging correctly. And I think getting more familiar with those numbers is going to be so helpful for everybody, because you don't know what you don't know. And seeing a number right there that says you left $47,000 on the table in the last 6 months is shocking at best. Like, I've had girls in my coaching containers crying, and it's horrible, but it's because they went back and did the math. And I'm like, oh, babe, we can only look forward. But when they come into a course like that and they realize they've been charging $110 an hour and they're 7 years experience and they're doing these big projects, and it's wrong, and how much has been left is heartbreaking. Especially, I know, because we've had conversations at the beginning where they've said, I don't know if I can afford to do the course. I'm like, well, week 3 just paid for you to do this course forever. Like, you can just stay here and be with me all the time. Course aside, I think that's prevented them from being able to invest in education, invest in something that they want for their business, because they don't have that cash flow. They're not protecting profit. So they're constantly just feeling like they work paycheck to paycheck, which is a really uncomfortable feeling when you run your own business. I don't think we started a business for that. Like, I want to celebrate the wins, but I don't want to feel miserable along the way. So we're going to talk about how to actually calculate the transformation number. And I'm going to give you a process, because I think if you've got a couple of steps that are repeatable, you'll be able to use it and implement it. Yes, the calculator's coming, but that's something you'll need to buy. So this podcast is definitely something that you can replay over and over and have that free version of attention to value pricing. So step 1, what does the client's life look like after this project? Let's model it out, get really specific. So when you're writing your proposals, especially now that you can get AI to help you whip together like the brief and all the different bits, I would spend some time voice memoing or writing, whatever your style is. I would spend a little bit of time trying to be as specific as possible. So not a timeless classic kitchen or a beautiful home, but an actual outcome. What does the actual life look like? How has it changed from your in-home consultation to how they move around the space right now? A family who can host Christmas for the first time in 3 years because the open plan actually flows now. They've got space for that. Or a home office that your husband can finally use without interrupting the kids' school day because of the acoustic zoning is now taken care of. Or a kitchen that photographs so well that you're able to list your Airbnb property, or you listed the property for sale, for example, and it sold 18 months later and got $85,000 over reserve. Like, paint that picture, really think specifically about how things have changed. Step 2, what does getting it wrong cost the client? So a badly briefed renovation is months of living in a construction site, budget blowouts, a result that doesn't work for the family, and cost to rectify that, to redo things. A commercial fit out without a design lead, contractor coordination goes nuts, materials that don't read right on camera, a fit that makes the brand look cheaper than it is, or and the people that work there can't work there. Everyone's seen, I recall working in corporate before, and I've seen some incredible design pitches and then really pick them apart from the perspective of the person that works in the travel agency. Like, once it was pitched to us to have all of these like standing pods, a bit like of an Optus store, I guess. It was early millennial, like it must have been early 2000s. And it was something that was happening in a lot of retail stores. But primarily what we do as travel agents, it didn't really make sense to be placed in almost like co-working hubs or spaces, sort of like floating hubs in the middle of the thing, because I need to be on the phone to maybe 8 airlines at once, and sometimes for up to 6 hours hold. Yes, it was a life. It was a time. And so you'd have all these different lines, and you can see when like the airline picks up, but they're all on hold because I have to sort out so many people's different itineraries and issues. I need to be stationary for that. I can't be like, yo, Paul, you go take over my pod and I'm going to go over here. Like, it wasn't going to work correctly. So the cost of that rolled out across our 76 stores nationally for STA when I worked there and was in leadership and saying, this does not work, would have been that we would have had to strip everything, fit it all out, and then it would have been wrong. And so we would have to have a working solution for that. So there is a huge cost to getting design outcomes wrong. We know that. Or what about like scope creep without documentation? A client who disputes the final invoice because nothing was written down, like that's got a cost. That's expensive, right? When we name what going wrong actually costs in time, money, stress, and opportunity, the value of doing it right becomes really easy for us to justify. So, again, articulating our value. Step 3, what's the floor for your design fee? So, this is a commercial reality check for you. Your fee must cover your time at a rate that reflects your expertise, your overheads. There needs to be a profit margin so that profit stays in the business after all the costs have been paid. And increasingly, the investment you've made in education, tools, systems that make you faster. If I hear one more person complain to me about, paying for an AI subscription, I'm like, okay, but just do the math. Like, is it going to give you enough time saving that it is a good investment for your business, or is it another paid subscription? Because I get that too, because I've signed up for some weird things. Sometimes I sign up for things I can't remember where I signed up for them. Then I can't unsubscribe. I think I was like signed up to like a wardrobe, like a capsule wardrobe assessment tool, like many months more than I should have been. I never used it. I didn't even know how to find it. I don't know how I signed up to it. Anyway, that is not this. So if you're signing up to the likes of Claude or ChatGPT or any of these to a pro account, you're getting some security benefits, you're getting advanced feature benefits, and you're probably getting your $60 a month as a business investment back over and over and over in productivity saves. The systems make you faster. They make this whole value pricing math work. So if you're using AI and your production speed goes up by 30%, that efficiency belongs in your margin. That becomes profit. It's not a client discount. If you reduce your rates to match that, you need to increase your conversion like way more. You need to chase stronger client acquisition. You need to get more yeses. You need to have a working CRM, know your sales projection line, where your leads come in. You may need to go to paid ads. It starts to become like a lot more work for what you could have just continued to charge correctly for with the projects that you want to do. Like, I know you guys don't want 120 projects a year. Like, that's not the model that as far as I'm aware. Unless you're listening and you have an e-design business like I did in 2020, and then you probably do that in a month. If I want to be really blunt with you, I would definitely say that in terms of value pricing and having that conversation and understanding how to articulate that number, you're much better off learning to articulate that value and having to have that conversation one time than going with that discounted model and having to sell yourself and have that conversation about why you're worth it many, many times over, right? So that you're actually probably times 10ing the amount of times you have to justify your rates and sell your value if you lower your pricing. So let's just learn to have the conversation, articulate the value, but do it for the right projects and with the right people. Step 4, set the fee based on the outcomes, not the hours. That's what this whole conversation is about. So I want you to understand your ceiling. So you look at what the project is worth to the client, not what it costs them to hire you, what the outcome is worth. So even if we don't talk about the outcome and you just talk about the project itself, the amount of times I talk to designers who are like, oh, it's a $2 million renovation. Okay, then why was your fee to take control of that entire thing $4,500? I can't with that. I don't think you need to just immediately go, it's a $2 million renovation. I'm going to charge 6% of the overall renovation cost for the design fees. Like, I don't think that's the method, but I think it's good to, like, when you do set your value pricing, also compare it up to what they're spending on the project, because you are going to be in and around that project for every single moment, every single decision, every single spiral, everything that they need, you will take care of. You will get those, if you're involved in managing trades or working all the way through to from concept to completion, you will have just been you are their EA, but you know every moving part of the project. You are just beyond what you can ever imagine value-wise, and what the project is worth to the client. They are willing to hire you at a reasonable percentage of that project cost. Or think about a kitchen renovation that adds $120,000 to the resale value of a home. A commercial fit out that lifts the venue's revenue per week if they're able to go and hire that out. your fee should be a sensible fraction of that number. So it's not 50%. It's not even 20%. I said 6% before, but it's definitely not 3%. It's something that feels proportionate, where the client looks at it and thinks, oh yeah, in the big scheme of things, that's a pretty reasonable slice of what I'm going to get at the end. Okay. The second check you want to do is around your floor. The fee, whatever you do decide that value fee is, has to be multiples of what it actually costs you to deliver. So it can't be a cost. That's your floor. You can't go below the floor, but I don't want you at the floor. We don't want you on the floor. I definitely want to be levitating the industry a little. So you don't want to be just charging for your hours that it takes you, your overheads, your tools, your expertise, the years it took you to get fast at this. If your real cost to deliver is $8,000, charging $8,200 isn't a business model. It's a very, very stressful hobby, and there's no cash flow in that. You need a multiple of that floor that leaves an actual margin. So that when I say multiple, I don't actually mean like if it's $8,000 that you have to go from 16,000 or above, like multiplying it by 2 or 3 or. I don't mean that. I mean that the fee lives somewhere between the floor and the ceiling. So the floor is what it actually costs you to deliver, and the ceiling is the top end of what you could charge for the type of outcome that you can deliver. And in my value calculator, you can do whatever you want because I am only making suggestions, but I've really tried to show a suggested median or midpoint that is very reasonable for what you're going to do. So you want the fee to live somewhere between high enough to be above your costs and to be profitable and to make you happy on site and make you want to show up and do the project, but low enough that it's relative to the client's outcome, low enough that it's relative to the client's expectations, and that the outcome doesn't have to be defensible. We don't have to go into being really defensive when we're suggesting this is the price it costs to engage me in the project. The reason that I think it really matters is that when a client questions your price, then we don't go defending our hours. You're not saying it's because it takes this long in SketchUp, or it's because I actually need X amount of hours to go to the showroom or whatever. It is quite defensive. And you're pointing at the outcome and saying, that's just a small fraction of what you get. Don't worry about that too much. This is the actuals that you're paying for. And then you kind of feel like you're questioning your own price, which all designers do, obviously, privately and constantly. But making sure you have a floor means that you check it against your actual costs and you confirm that you're not just covering expenses. If your design work contributes to a $180,000 renovation outcome and realistically the quality of the design affects every other cost decision on that project, a 15% design fee is $27,000. Is that a lot, or is it a rational fraction of the outcome? You can tell me. You can come and tell me in my DMs over at _Rhiannon Lee on Instagram. I'm not going to answer that for you, but I would like to go through that number one more time and have a real think about it. So they're spending $180,000 on a renovation outcome. Realistically, the quality of the design affects every other cost decision on that project, whether what tiles were selected, who the tiler was, what the grout was, every other thing, was it waterproof, just everything that you're organizing. And then a 15% design fee of that $180,000 renovation is $27,000. Is that a lot, or is that a rational fraction of the outcome that they are getting for their $180,000? I'll leave that one with you. Okay. Part 4, let's get into how to talk to our clients about it, because it's all well and good for you to be like, okay, I'll listen to this 30-minute podcast every time I need to do my pricing and get a little pep up. But then the client is sort of having conversations that sometimes get difficult. This is sometimes a difficult sell being in a service-based industry. It just is. And the conversation sometimes just feels like the hardest part, because it's easy to just itemize hourly rate. It feels like less questions will be asked and it's not as abstract if I'm just like, but here is what, here's how many hours this takes and that takes. You feel like when it's all itemized, the client won't ask you as many questions, but there are ways to have this conversation and present your value easily without trying to hide it in itemized hourly lines. I popped in a little script that I think works. Don't use it word for word. It's more just about the structure. But, when I'm speaking to clients, I'm very much like, the investment to engage me in your project is X. If that's for the full scope of work as outlined above. I cannot wait for you to finally have a kitchen that works for how you cook. And after what we've seen in the living room, it's going to be so exciting that it won't just be hosting ghosts anymore. People will want to come and sit in it. Have a read through the scope. Let me know if there's absolutely anything you'd like to remove or anything you feel that I've missed, because scope included at this stage is priced at the project rate. Anything that we add after the point, like at the end of the job, that will be charged at my hourly rate, which is $240. So I'm really looking forward to get started. Let me know what you think, something along those lines. The thing about this particular script is I wasn't justifying the rate. And I know you're probably thinking, why did you even say about hourly rate? Won't they just calculate if it's $27,000? Won't they just divide it by 240 and then work out your hourly rate? Sure, they could, but that's actually not how I priced the $27,000 project fee. So I wasn't justifying my rate. I was reframing the entire basis of the conversation. Did I mention an hourly rate here? Yes, but that is intended to make them include as much as possible right now while I'm calculating the value pricing, because scope creep has or attracts a higher fee. Now, I'm going to explain that to you just as inside of this episode, even though it probably needs its own episode. But when I'm coaching, I always, if anyone wants to work with an hourly fee, I'm like, great, what's your hourly fee? Excellent. Now, what's your hourly fee if it's additional scope? And they're like, what? It's just the same hourly fee. But in my mind, or to my mind, it is not the same hourly fee, because if you go and add scope at the end, or you didn't tell me at the beginning that you actually wanted me to do installation and procurement and styling or whatnot, I have to affect my project pipeline heavily to accommodate that at the end. We all know this feeling. You get to the end of the project and then they're like, actually, can we get you to come over and style it? Or can we add this? Or I'm thinking now that we might want to look at the bathrooms while we've got you. What does it cost or whatnot? And you just kind of tack it on. But it's quite annoying. Like, I was about to wrap this up and now I'm going to spend another 6 months and I can't take these other jobs because I'm stuck in this job. So I see that as a penalty, a fee. So I always give my clients the opportunity to let me know if there's absolutely anything else they would like priced inside the value pricing. Don't say value pricing, but priced inside the project fee. And if not, just be aware it will be charged at a premium, a $245 hourly rate for any additional scope. That's a little tip for you. I've probably spoken about it before. If you've worked or coached with me in my world, I've definitely helped you include that into your contracts, and everybody benefits. And then when you do add something on that takes another 6 months, I'm not resentful about it. I'm earning top dollar, loving my life. I'm like, yeah, sure. In fact, at the end, you might want to upsell. Like, I've got a bit of time. Do you want me to come on over and make the beds? It costs this much. So it's a win-win business. It's a good business strategy. And if you're not doing it already, really, I would suggest a little challenge for you in Q2 and Q3. Can you start adding this approach to scope creep? Now, I want to talk about objections when we're having these conversations, because they come up. This one is real. It popped up in coaching last week. A client pushed back on one of my designers and told her that actually ChatGPT, so she sent out a $9,200 proposal pretty much. And the client emailed back and said, ChatGPT said this should only cost $4,000. Oh my gosh, cheeky. The answer to that would never be to defend your hours, yeah? Because it's a race to the bottom. It's terrible. ChatGPT doesn't know the brief, the builder relationship, your suburb, your deadline, what a bad design decision on a project of this size would cost you to fix. It hasn't been to design school. That's what you do. That's what the fee reflects, right? So I was like, okay, take a breath, be calm. We want to go back quite direct, not defensive. Like, you can write the defensive version and then throw it back through ChatGPT or Claude and say, help me be a little less spiky here because I'm feeling emotional. I'm feeling annoyed. I get that. We don't compete with robots and we don't compete with robot outcomes. In fact, I will put that at the top of my email. Dear sir or madam, to whom it may concern, I do not compete with robots. The end. It's just not a thing. I'm not a robotic designer. I am a human and I am going to give you a human outcome. And that is all I'm prepared to talk about when it comes to objections like ChatGPT said you should be $4,000. Do you know how many actual replies I want to give that? Well, ChatGPT said that you, no. Imagine getting into just a back and forth like that, but it's very tempting, right? AI efficiency, let's talk about whether it's a risk or an opportunity, because it's available to everybody now. We've got all sorts of automations, agents. You're probably not there yet, but you're going there this year. Trust me on that. So let's talk about the competitive pressure angle, because it's actually really happening already. And I think a lot of designers are thinking about it backwards. If you're billing hourly, your AI efficiency is going to damage your business model. AI efficiency will just start to erode your income unless you adjust. It's a trap. It's absolutely one that we're all going to get caught in if we're not changing things now. It's why the time for money model is structurally broken in 2026 in a way it just wasn't like 2 or 3 years ago. Now we can't be billing hourly. If you've shifted to value-based and project-based pricing, the AI efficiency goes entirely to your margin. It's a benefit to you. You deliver the same quality outcome, just get there faster. Your client experience is better because things were never forgotten. Something was automated, a project status report went out without your knowledge, or the documentation is wildly organized and everything just feels good. The communication is really responsive. The project was really tight. The documentation was really clean. Your profit is higher. You are a happier designer. Like, you are able to close the laptop earlier. You're not working nights anymore. You show up with less bags under your eyes to in-home consults. Your capacity opens up as well for the next project. Like, you're actually able to properly think about how you scale the business. So let's go back to our competitor who's using AI. If she's also billing hourly, she's accidentally discounting herself every time she does it. So she's passing all of her efficiency gains to her clients without capturing any of it as profit. The pricing value calculator that I'm building is intended to lift the whole industry up. It shows you your floor, the price you should never ever go below, which is basically your cost. And then it shows you the value ceiling. How high could you go around this area? And it gives you that suggested median. It factors in how many wet areas, the size of the house, the scope that you're delivering, and the postcode, which is like super clever if I do say so myself. That part was hard, but being able to map everyone's industry standards by their location, because and the reason it's postcode is because there's some people that I've been coaching recently in the hills area of New South Wales. There can be 2 suburbs next to each other, and the affluency and socioeconomic situation of those 2 suburbs is chalk and cheese, and they're next to each other. So I wouldn't give the same local area marketing strategy or digital strategy to those same designers, even though they're about an 8-minute drive from each other's house, but they live in completely different worlds. So I think adding that postcode information in the back end for me was really important, because then you're just not linked as like you're Melbourne, you're Sydney. It's so wildly specific and nuanced. So I've actually already shared this value calculator with my studio build beta round that kicked off yesterday. I'm really excited to launch it to the industry. It's a tool that is going to benefit everybody. It is not the gospel. It's not the be all and end all, but it's going to start to coach you and train you into seeing and recognizing your value in a greater number than you are right now. The designer who puts this together first, AI efficiency captured through smart pricing structure, has a permanent margin advantage. So don't be the competitor who keeps passing on the discount of productivity to your client. She's producing the same quality outcomes in less time, charging for the outcome and keeping the difference. You've earned it. That gap compounds, that profit margin keeps compounding as cash flow every project, every year going forward. You're not going backwards. We're not going to send smaller and smaller invoices till we disappear. The designers who don't work this out, they're just simply becoming cheaper. And I don't think they're going to actually mean to. I think they just won't change their process in time, because the model that they're operating on makes this inevitable. They are going to sink to invisibility. What are you going to do if you've been undercharging for years? Okay, so now I'm assuming you've done the exercise, you've looked at your numbers, you've compared your rate to the value that you're creating, and you've realized there's a pretty big gap. What you're charging versus what you're delivering, that gap is significant. Please don't panic. Don't price jump like, whoa, okay, we've got to lift the prices 80%. Raising your rate by 80% overnight on existing clients is relationship graveyard. It is a big problem to your relationship. It's a terrible strategy. That is not what I'm saying. Do not do that. The sequence that works, new inquiries get your new rate. That just goes without saying. Why would we go backwards when you know better, you do better? Without any official announcement, fanfare, explanation, no parties. We're not going to get a banner on the front fence. It's just new client, new pricing. This is so normal. Just do it immediately. From tomorrow, if you contact me, I will ascertain your project and what outcome I will be delivering, and I will charge for that delivery. Existing clients need to be transitioned or grandfathered, and grandfathering is a pricing strategy whereby when somebody enters your world at a certain rate, you honor that rate forevermore. Like you put them on a grandfathered rate, which means that if they were paying $8 a month for the subscription that you have and then you upped it to $40 a month, they continue at the grandfathered rate of $8 a month to reward them for their loyalty. So you'd want to do the same thing for existing clients or transition them. So usually if you're going to transition them, you want to give them a minimum of 90 days or a quarter's notice before any rate review. You want to have a clear conversation about why, like what's changed in the offer and outcome for them, what's changed in the scope and services. It's a pretty dangerous territory transitioning someone who's on an existing project proposal to a higher rate. Sometimes it's necessary if you undercharge and you're like, I don't know, 8 weeks into a project that's like a 3-year project and it's just not going to work. You may have to have a really difficult conversation. But essentially, what normally happens is you see out your existing projects and then and anything that you're taking on new is at the new rate, unless you can really strongly frame it around what they're getting, not just what the increase of cost. So if there is an increase in the deliverables, the documentation standards, the AI tooling, if you're going to be able to deliver them something way better for a better fee, it might make that conversation easier for you. But essentially, mostly I would be coaching designers I work with to see the projects out and just focus on the future. Focus on changing for all of the next inquiry. You may need to shift your offer structure at the same time. So I'm speaking to a very broad audience. I don't know, we're never talking specifics on the podcast, but if you have something that is packaged, you may have to shift your offer structure if you need to move from hourly to project-based or value-based, wherever you can. That could be because you have always just sent out like blocks of 5 hours, 10 hours. Like you just might have to shuffle around and check your offer structure. It honestly makes your conversion, like your rate of conversion, much easier because you're no longer defensive and presenting an hourly rate and itemized. And then people are saying to you, actually, we might take the 3Ds out. That's more expensive than I thought. Or we'll only have one concept, which makes your job harder. Like I want to give you 2 concepts because I want to know exactly what you want in this project. So it actually protects a lot of boundaries as well when we have just that end number. Now, when I talk about value pricing, yes, I'm talking about the price to engage me for the entire scope, but you still have the ability to schedule that out to be a phase 1 dollar amount, a value price, a phase 2 value price, and a phase 3 value price or whatnot. You are not just locked into being like, not talking about it, it's $27,000. You work, like it's fine. People need detail less than you think they do. We can over document proposals sometimes in our tendency to want to explain our value, right? So we over explain it. We make things complicated. Simple sales, we know that, and simplify the proposal as well. Your clients will be grateful. They don't want to see an Excel spreadsheet that's like blowing their mind when all they want to know is how much does it cost to get what you said you would give me. Clients are going to push back. They might complain they weren't expecting that fee or that price. That happens all the time. That's on us a little bit too. It's on us to have better qualifying conversations. Not every client is the right client for this repriced studio. The ones who are going to push back the hardest on a value pricing price point or wanting a more fair price or wheel and deal, they're almost always the clients who will cost you the most in scope creep, approval delays, emotional labor down the track. You are going to work harder for these people. So let them go gracefully or find a way to amend the scope so there's less work for you to do and therefore there's less fee for them, but nothing has anything to do with how long it takes. I'm going to end out the episode just reiterating we're sort of at a bit of a turning point when it comes to AI. Not every designer is currently using AI. Not every designer is using AI well. Not every designer who is using AI has figured out that 30% efficiency yet or got their productivity right or figured out the pricing structure that will capture that efficiency. Like this is a pretty new thing for a lot of people. If you're listening, you may not have even really, really deeply considered why hourly pricing is dead in 2026. Most designers are just getting faster and billing the same or less. So that thing that I mentioned, the fake competitor doing is actually a warning sign and an alarm for what I'm seeing industry-wide. I really believe that designers who figure this out in the next 3 months are going to have two major advantages that stack. The first is higher margin per project because they're pricing for the outcomes, not mucking around with how long it takes, even though that time calculation is changing wildly. And the second is higher capacity because AI assisted production means that they can get on with, without working more, they can take on more projects. Those two things in combination are not just a competitive edge. They're everything you built this business for, and they're exactly what you deserve. I feel like the window ahead of us that is currently being flung wide open is not indefinitely open. Most of your competitors are still figuring out whether or not to try Claude. They're like saying, comment blah, 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 and I'll send you my Claude skill, comment blah, blah, blah. Yes, I'm guilty of it too because I have these lead magnets that I've built. I do want to share them with you, and the easiest way to do that is to automate it so that I'm not having to manually reply to 400 people sending me the word build. It's not physically possible, but it can be a massive distraction for you. You need to get on with designing as well. You can't just live in like, look what Claude can do. And so some of your competitors will get really stuck in that loop. And I think that this is the place that you can really get ahead by focusing on. I think if you're, rather than getting all Claude confused and distracted, why don't you just sit down, listen to this podcast again, write down everything and learn to value price correctly? Because the designers who don't work this out, they're not going to disappear from the industry. They'll just slowly become the cheaper option. The ones where when your client says, oh, I actually got a quote from someone else, it was half your price. Okay, well, that is probably because they are passing on efficiency gains because of their inability to value price. And that's okay. Let them have that. I didn't mean to bring a whole Mel Robbins controversy into my podcast. I've never even read the Let Them theory. I just mean like, it's okay. If they want to go with someone half the price, they're going to get that half price experience as well. So it is so fine. You do not have to be in that comparison. I don't want us to race to the bottom. I am so wildly passionate about us all winning. The calculator that I built is to coach all the cream to rise to the top. I want all of us to be profitable. I want all of us to be the happy designer. Like, I want to rebrand to the happy designer coach. I don't want people to come to me and say I'm living paycheck to paycheck and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm still feeling like I'm working and delivering this amount of value, but I've charged $3,200 for this project that was 9 weeks. You're not supposed to earn $3,000 across a 9-week period ever. Like, I don't understand so many of the pricing conversations that I sometimes have. So if you're currently doing Studio CEO, this episode is your companion listening to prepare you for the Revenue Reset Week. If you're not in the program, that's fine. You can jump on the waitlist for the next round. I'll pop the link in the show notes, or you can come and chat to me in my DMs anytime. But yes, this will become preparation for that week going forward. This is a really important podcast episode. If you could share any of my podcasts with any of your design friends, I think this would be the one that I would ask you, could you flick this to a friend that doesn't listen to Designing Success and ask them why not? No, don't. You don't need to do that. But if you could share this on your stories on Instagram, I don't ask for that very often because I find that so cringe, but I think this is an important conversation. If one person walks away from this conversation and goes, I think the very next project that I'm going to write a proposal for, I think I'm ready to really start to think about what does that day look when I hand the keys back over and the whole house has changed? What could I charge for that feeling rather than what does it cost to have me do 32 hours of SketchUp modeling? The pricing calculator that I've mentioned all the way through this, depending on when you're listening to it, obviously if you listen to it live when it drops here on the 7th of May 2026, it'll be in waitlist format. The waitlist is over at rhiannonlee.myflowdesk.com/value. If you pop that in your browser and you go and sign up, you'll be the first to know when that industry calculator is launched. Now, this is a benefit for the industry. This is not something that I'm looking to make super expensive or elite. Like, I just think it's so necessary to have that support when you're coming up with that value pricing number, that I just hope that everybody sees that as a business expense, a subscription monthly that is very low. It's crazy low because it's really about how many people can we help? How many designers can I get on this subscription so that I know everybody has a coach in their pocket that can talk them through like, okay, but don't go below the floor. This is your ceiling. This is where you should be. I want that so much for all of you. You can get on the waitlist in the show notes or by going to that link that I just shared. If you want a copy of the actual strategy that I went through today, all of the steps on how we calculate value pricing, there is a link in the show notes. It will open up a Notion page, and I've just stored it all in there for you because you may find that you need to take it slow the first couple of times until you start to really get to celebrate your value and live your best life. And I cannot wait. Please come and tell me if you switch to value pricing when you get a yes. I want to celebrate that with you. I am really, really, really motivated to seeing this change in the industry and not letting anybody get left behind, just diving to bargain pricing because we're going to get so much better with AI. Okay, I will chat to you next week. Bye for now.